Welcome to the Aligned on AI podcast, real business conversations, real AI outcomes. Today, I'm joined by Simon Henson, joining us from Derbyshire in the UK. Simon spent many years in the police force before starting Titan Investigations from scratch, and he's built it into a trusted, high-discretion service business. Simon runs a model many small businesses will recognise. He's the engine room for most of the business, with a network of associates doing field work, which means quality, training, and consistency matter just as much as sales. In most businesses, confidentiality is a policy. In Simon's world, it's actually one of the products. Today, we'll talk about the founder journey, building trust, scaling with associates, and the reality of marketing a professional service. And we'll link it into AI. What can genuinely save time and improve consistency, and where you need clear guardrails to protect clients, confidentiality, and reputation. So, Simon, welcome. For anyone who doesn't know you, what's your story in a nutshell? How have you got to where you are today?
Good afternoon. So my name's Simon Henson. I'm Managing Director of Titan Private Investigation Limited here in Derby, although we do have 10 offices from Truro in the southwest up to Manchester in the northwest. So I'm from a policing background. I did 17 years with Nottinghamshire Police, specialising in surveillance for the majority of that. During austerity, I decided to see what was in the real world due to what was happening to the police force, pension reform, promotions being frozen, and I never went back. So I set up Titan Private Investigation Limited, which is effectively a civilian police force, I guess. We investigate where the police don't in civil matters and matters which aren't necessarily criminal, although we do get involved in criminal ones as well.
Super. So on a day-to-day basis then, what are your teams mostly doing? What sort of work are you actually practically carrying out?
Surveillance. So our business model is 80% of our clients are corporates. So that'd be instructions from the corporate world, and 20% is private clients. So the majority, definitely, of our operational demand is through surveillance. That will be a minimum of 2 surveillance operatives being deployed to covertly follow somebody. It may be someone, for example, that is absent from work, or it might be for an insurance company where someone has had an accident. There's no dispute in that. However, how that affects their day-to-day life, there may be questions around. So we would follow them to find out what their lifestyle and their day-to-day life, range of movement, etc. is.
Right. Okay. Sounds exciting stuff on the face of it, but I'm sure it gets pretty mundane for you that's been doing it for years. So, you started up Titan Investigations, brave thing to do, despite what was happening with the policing. What did the policing background give you that helped you most as a founder? I'm thinking things like mindset, process, people skills, resilience, even maybe something else?
Yeah. So the majority of what the police gave me was obviously very disciplined training, because we were working certainly when I was working in counter-terror, at the highest level where national security is at risk. So the training was phenomenal. And I think as a result of that, credibility is something that I took away from the police force because of where I'd worked within the forces. From a business aspect, being a policeman and then coming into the business world, not knowing what a profit and loss sheet is, it was a huge, huge learning curve. But yeah, things that I brought away is probably people skills, dealing with people from when I was in uniform for the few years that I did that.
Yeah.
Certainly in middle management, dealing with grievances and staff, because wherever you have people, there is usually a problem. So I was able to bring that away, and certain processes which the government structure uses. But the main thing I brought away was probably credibility and an element of trust that people would then entrust in me.
I could see that. So obviously, it's a really steep learning curve for you, founding the business, having not done anything like that before. What would you say was the hardest thing during the first 12 months? I mean, lead generation, pricing, just, I don't know, confidence. What was it, do you think?
So when I first left, the business model was set up the company and then slowly try and build that to a point where it's self-sufficient. So initially when I came out, I was a one-man band, and I would generally work for established companies, but I wanted my company to become established. So I was working as a subcontractor for these established companies, and I would then plough any profits that I had back into building up Titan Private Investigation Limited. So I would suggest the hardest things for me was getting my head around marketing, networking, certainly the accounting side, because back 12 years ago when I founded Titan, there wasn't any electronic software, or there certainly wasn't the need to have the electronic software for accounting. So I had to do all of that manually and work out how I was going to store things. It was just absolutely huge learning curve.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I guess there was a turning point where, there was doubts in the first few months, maybe, but there was a turning point where you realised, hey, this business has momentum. It's going to work. I can see it's really going to develop. Could you pinpoint that? Could you tell when that was happening?
Good, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So my career break was for 5 years. I always intended to go back and finish my service with the police. When I got to the 4-year point, though, the phone was ringing here in the office and I was self-sufficient. So I no longer needed to subcontract for other established companies. I was self-sufficient and was trying to get a resourcing structure in so that I could meet the operational demand which I'd created. So there certainly was a turning point, and I would say it was at the 4-year point when the phone didn't stop.
Wow. Yeah. Brilliant. And I know you've done work abroad, but you're now mostly, if not exclusively, in the UK. What changed? Why? Is it just simplicity? Was it, business early on was, take the work where you could find it? What changed? Has policy changed? Has security changed? What's changed?
I think the economy's changed. When I was doing a lot of work abroad, and it was an awful lot of work internationally when I first came away from the police, I was working for other companies. I have had a number of my own instructions from companies, private individuals, which has taken my teams abroad. However, I think with changes in the economy over the last 12 to 18 months, when you start to price up an international job and you're talking airfares, you're talking accommodation, you're talking about daily rates of pay, it builds up and builds up. And I think people now think, do I really need to do that? Or can we do it a different way? So I think people think twice now. But we do
Right.
still get international work, but the budget usually has to be quite high. So it's either a high net worth individual or a large corporation.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you can choose to be selective these days as opposed to the first few months of working.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, I don't know for certain, but I think we've had conversations prior to this where you don't employ most of your operatives directly, you use associates. So, was that an obvious model to choose, or was it just one that you gradually worked out was going to work best for you?
Initially, it was just easier because we cover all of England, generally all of England for domestic instructions. If we were to have a team of staff, maybe 4 staff, we would reduce our outgoings massively. However, it builds in logistics. So if my staff are based in Derby and we've got a job down in Southampton, potentially 4 hours of their working day is going to be travelling down there. So I've got to send them down the day before. I then got to pay for hotels. If I use subcontractors, partners, whatever you want to call it, they travel in their own time. They decide where they want to work geographically, how far they will travel. And I don't pay any expenses to get to and from the task, the start point, simply because we have people all over England and there's no need to pay anybody travel. So it's a conversation I've had with the accountant stroke arguments the last 5 years. 50% of all the revenue that comes in through the company goes out to subcontractors. Whereas if I had 4 staff, it would save an absolute mint. However, I just can't get my head around the logistics of how I would get someone to Southampton with hotels and how I'm better off as a result. So at the moment, it works. Maybe I'll address it again at a later time, but at the moment, subcontractors, partners, it works.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's probably a really good time to be even thinking about this with the developments with AI in particular, automating a lot of work. You've got artificial intelligence agents that will actually undertake decision making within certain parameters on your behalf. There's digital twinning. You're just one man. You're one man with all the experience, with all the knowledge in your head. If you could clone you, then you're suddenly expanding your capabilities. So just bearing that in mind, I guess, with what you're doing now and maybe what you could be doing differently in the future, where do you see the biggest time leakage for you? What takes up your time that really doesn't or shouldn't need to? I'm thinking about admin type stuff, scheduling, report writing, even communications, training, even marketing. What do you think's the stuff that you don't really want to be doing, or you think should not be you that needs to be doing it?
The main thing I do on a day-to-day basis is networking and business development, bringing in new business. We've got other staff here who do the admins, that might be report writing. We have staff which answer the telephones. We have staff which will be resourcing tasks. All of these things I find quite laborious and painful, and I think AI might be able to help, but I don't know a lot about AI. So, for example, a report, all of our reports are generally the same. All we do is drop different photographs or still images into a report, and then we write the report like a story describing what's happening in that image. I presume that can be done by AI, and I'd love to be shown if that can, because that would save hours. We do what we call camera soak. So it might be, for example, there's a company that's asked us to look at an individual who has had an accident at work, and they claim that they cannot leave the house. So it might be that we put a camera in a public place to record over 5 days, 24/7, to find out the routine of that person and when they come in and out. So we can then potentially intelligently deploy a surveillance team to get the best efficiency out of them.
Yeah.
It's a really boring process for the admin staff to then go through all of that footage to find out when our person of interest exits. And if it's a communal door, for example, lo and behold, it usually is, then there's lots of people coming in and out. So it's not just looking for movements.
Yeah.
The particular person. So maybe AI could help with that. I don't know. But that is a hell of
Yeah.
a long process.
Yeah. I think, just ignoring any of the sort of security concerns of the Big Brother type stuff going on, other people not wanting to really be recorded, which I'm sure you have to deal with in any respect. What AI does very well is deal with large amounts of data or large amounts of repetitive aspects that need a bit of thought, but otherwise are pretty automated and just can be undertaken almost semi-robotically. I think the key thing, I've had conversations in other podcasts where, it still needs that human oversight. It still needs that final sign off. AI isn't perfect yet. Will it ever be? We don't know. But certainly, yeah, there will be aspects of AI in all of these areas, including some of the work that you're doing as well with, building up business contacts and such like. So, yeah, absolutely. There will be stuff there to talk about with you outside of this, I guess. But one of the things that comes to mind with the operatives that, you must have a lot of operatives out there. I mean, how do you vet them? How do you onboard even your associates? How do you make them, almost represent you Titan Investigations? Are they just there in the background doing what you ask them to do, or is it a lot more complicated than that?
That was one of the hardest things to do, letting go and not being a one-man band where it's just Simon doing everything. So when the early days, I would go out on the jobs and I might have someone else with me. As soon as I wasn't on the ground, I noticed that quality went down. And I think you've just got to choose people that are invested and want to do the job rather than turn up and get paid. So one thing we do is we have a training wing to the company. So we do a 5-day course, we train, nurture and further develop those operatives through work and pay them. So we're able to sort of pick in that regard. And people that come through the course, it is like a 5-day interview. We get to see them when they're tired, when they're stressed. We see how they react, and we see whether they're lazy or whether they can't be bothered to get involved and they're happy to sit back. So that is a major part of the vetting process. However, the only other vetting we can do is DBS. Make sure that they're registered with ICO, the Information Commissions Officer, in regards to data protection. We would also make sure that they have their own insurance because we can't insure them as subcontractors. So they're going to need professional indemnity and public liability. Other than that, there's not a lot more that we can do to vet who we're using. But I pretty much handpick everyone that I want for the task because I've personally worked with them previously because I've been in this game in the civilian sector for 12 years, and it is a small industry. So I
Yeah.
get to know people on a personal and professional level, which I think goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what does your training look like? Is it all done in person? Is it all done by you? Is it part online? How does it look?
Yeah. So we've been doing training since 2017. We run an RQF level 4, which is just above an A level in 5 days in covert surveillance operations. That course is 5 days long. We teach all aspects of surveillance on that course. So foot surveillance, mobile surveillance, technical surveillance. And then at the end of it, they graduate or don't, and then come and work, hopefully, for Titan. And we usually have them for about 12 months. And after that, they sort of fly the nest. They might leave the industry, they might set their own company up, but that's pretty much what the training looks like.
Yeah. Okay. And as you grow, what's harder? Is it finding capacity from yourself? Is it maintaining quality? I don't know, competition, or even managing client expectations? What do you think is going to be hard?
All of the above. So managing client expectations is huge. You
Yeah.
notice it particularly if it's a private client because they want the world on a stick because they're paying a lot of money. Whereas the
Yeah.
corporate world, they'll pretty much leave you to it because it's not their money and there's an element of trust and they've
Yeah.
probably used it before, so they know what we're capable of. But a private client, it might be the first and only time they ever use us. So managing expectations is huge. Resourcing is a massive headache. So trying to find someone who is available in the area, because we don't own them. They're not PAYE. They might be working for somebody else, or they might have domestic issues, private commitments that they have. So actually finding the right staff, the right profile of person is also massive. And we don't really have HR issues because we're quite tight knit here in the Derby office, but we have had issues before with subcontractors that potentially might go rogue or try and steal clients. And so I have had headaches with that. But I'd say day-to-day basis, resourcing and managing client expectations are the biggest issues for us.
Yeah, yeah. Just moving on to the marketing side of it. So I know you've done your own podcast, still do, and provide your own content online. What have you learned about what actually drives inquiries? Is it easy to understand from what you've done, or is it, do more of what you have been doing if it appears to be working well?
Yeah, so return on investment is really hard to pinpoint, but we do get calls where, for example, we've done it many times. We'll do an episode on the training program, and then a few months later, we might get someone ring up and say, I want to do the training course. You take their email and say, I'll send you details about the course. And they've said, I know all about it. I've seen your podcast or I've seen your YouTube channel. So it's hard to measure that return on investment. However, I think it's been brilliant for us because it's educating people before they come to us. And secondly, it's given a face because it's me there. There's an element of trust that I'm not a scammer because they can see I've done 200 videos and I talk about the industry with a depth of knowledge. But it's changed. So when we first started Titan PI TV on YouTube and podcast, we just did a bubble map of what are all the questions that we get asked commonly. Let's answer those because no doubt they're going to be Googled. Or secondly, try and educate people before they call us. Then we went on to explaining certain services, and then we embedded those onto the service pages within the website so people can see a face and they can be spoken to about, for example, matrimonial surveillance or proving cohabitation or graphology, which is handwriting analysis, which someone might never have used before. And then we went for clickbait, and that seemed to have done us better. So we would think of a title like How to Spot a Surveillance Team, but we probably wouldn't give anything away about how to spot a surveillance team in it. So that particular one, we actually spoke about how when we're out and about, certainly doing the training, we come across surveillance teams and why they stand out to us because of sloppy tactics. But the clickbait and the reactions, negative and positive, you get from how do you spot a surveillance team? I think we got something like 25,000 views on it in a week. So It's very much about the title and clickbait. Can I relate that to revenue or instructions? It's very hard to.
Yeah.
But it's exposure.
No, I know, I latched on in my mind a little bit to what you said there about, the face being familiar and therefore trustworthy. And I think this is one of the aspects that I'm seeing with artificial intelligence as well. There's, for people who are just starting off with AI, it's a bit of a black art. It's a bit of a digital only sort of consideration, but actually, it really needs a human side to it. And that's what I'm trying to do basically in how I'm taking aligned minds. It is about having that human intelligence alongside the artificial intelligence. So I can understand that completely. So appreciate you mentioning that. How do you trust or build trust quickly? I mean, especially when I guess your clients might be nervous in some ways or emotional, even suspicious about you. What is it? Just that face to face? Is it only you that gives them that confidence, or is it more than that?
Well, we always put them at rest. I mean, people are getting scammed left, right, and centre, and this industry is no different. It's not a licensed industry. There's lots of cowboys and cowgirls with glossy websites will take your money. So some clients might come to us and they've been burnt already. So for us, yes, it's seeing a face. It's seeing many years of that face being on YouTube, for example. It's the background of saying what my background is. But more importantly, I think it's when you say you're a part of an association or an institute. So if there is then an issue, they can then go to that association or institute, make a complaint, and the association or institute will become a mediator. Not that we've ever had to use that, but there is a backstop in regards to that.
Yeah.
I think you can only go so far. If someone thinks you're going to scam them, you're going to struggle to win them round. But Usually it's seeing a face, a familiar face, which is over YouTube for many years. The fact that we're ICO registered, we're insured, we're full members of the Institute of Professional Investigators and also the Association of British Investigators, I think goes a long way. That helps win them round. It certainly works with companies. But if people are skeptical, with private clients, we ask for payment up front. So sometimes we might say, okay, we'll do 50% up front and 50% upon a result. And sometimes that helps get that trust. So it's not just seeing a face.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned YouTube there. I mean, does that take a lot of time for you to do? Would you do more if you had more time? Was it something you enjoyed doing, or was it, just a necessity of the job?
I found it really hard initially talking to a camera with no one behind it. I've sort of got used to that. The thing I find hardest is content. And maybe AI would help. Well, I know it would. AI could help with content. It's something that every Tuesday I start thinking about Friday's episode.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's different levels that you could sort of incorporate into that as well. I mean, I mentioned about the digital twinning. These days, I mean, there is a trust element to it, but you could literally be cloned online, really, and then different sort of outputs put there. I think you just keep that trust by saying, you're absolutely upfront about what AI has been used to help you produce what your outputs are, and then that just maintains that trust. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot that can be done there. So do you use AI at all today, even lightly? And if you have you found anything particularly useful yet, or is it just something you're just starting to think about?
I have used it for branding. So we did some Titan PITV t-shirts. So we used it for the branding of that, which we then used and went to print. I have used it on the odd occasion to help me think of content for the YouTube straight podcast. But I would suggest that that's probably as far as it's got. I don't use it enough.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's that's where a lot of businesses are, I think. So I don't know, where can you see AI going in your business or in your sector at least, and where should it never go? There might be some, really important matters such as privacy, security, accuracy, and then lesser things maybe to a degree, record keeping, that kind of thing. Where do you think it could be heading in your sector?
Well, I think where it shouldn't go is where it affects the integrity of our products, our imagery, our video footage. The integrity of that is everything. And
Yeah.
to start editing imagery or metadata on a SIM card or a memory card, we can't do that. We can't allow that to happen, although it can happen. It's easily done.
Yeah.
That's my biggest fear. Where could it help? I would like to streamline the report writing. I would like to streamline, I spoke about the camera soak, where we're looking for the times that a subject may come out of an address so we can intelligently and efficiently deploy a surveillance team to get the results we need. I can see all of that being streamlined and just having at the end of it a quality control with a human to make sure
Yeah.
that it's correct. Let's pre-read it and just someone checking it for quality control.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. I think, AI is there to be another colleague, another tool, another buddy for you to really fall on to do a lot of these tasks a lot more quickly and maybe more effectively in a lot of places. But yeah, nothing really replaces that final check, shall we say, from a qualified human. So I think that sounds bang on. Well, just some quick fire takeaways then to finish us off. Maybe one lesson about going from employee to founder that most people learn too late. What was I don't know, some kind of takeaway that you can pass on as a nugget for people who might be thinking?
Something I might do differently.
Or that you say that I learnt this and I learnt it too late.
Yeah. Content. When I had my website made, I was told that you need content weekly, if not bi-weekly or monthly. And I just thought that was the creator of the website wanting a salary coming in. But he was completely right. And it is content. Lots of videos, embed them in your website, having links to YouTube, having backlinks, networking. Networking is my main role these days. So things that I would take away that I'd do different certainly is loads of content, whether that be video or blogs. And I would network to hell, because networking is where your name gets out there, and that's where you get your reputation and then the instructions.
Yep, it sounds good. I can relate to that too. Okay, maybe one last thing then. What are you most excited about building next? Is it investigation side, is it the training side, or is there something new in the pipeline that you're thinking about?
There's always something in the pipeline, whether that's another business or more ideas for this business. But my overall goal is growth, so that then I've got an exit strategy and to be able to not be here when the business works.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the important aspects of AI. I keep bringing it back to this. Everybody, certainly since COVID, people have put a lot of value on their time and the amount of time that they've spent at home. They don't want to be working all the hours that, is sort of required of them at the moment. And AI can play a really important role, I think, of really simplifying people's jobs. So they're doing the aspects of the work that they really enjoy, not doing all the mundane, tedious stuff that they don't want to do, and get some time back. The amount of time that can be saved by AI is actually quite incredible. So yeah, maybe that 3 or 4 day week is in the pipeline. Simon, thank you so much for that. It's really, really, it's always sort of mind blowing to hear how other sectors are going about their work and the difficulties and lessons that they're taking from that. But no, really interesting to see as a business leader how you've gone about your work as well. And yeah, all the best for the future on that. Again, where standards and discretion really matter and reputation really is at the forefront of your business. So thanks again. If you enjoyed this episode, no worries. Please follow Aligned Minds AI on LinkedIn for practical tips and updates on future episodes of the Aligned on AI podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.